The only situations that I've seen where a reverse mortgage makes any kind of sense. Mm-hmm. Obviously, pretty much all your wealth is tied up in your home.
Yeah.
You don't want to move from your home. You don't want to sell your house to tap the equity. And you don't have any kids, or you don't have any beneficiaries that you care about whether or not they get any type of an inheritance. Because when you do a reverse mortgage, the idea of a reverse mortgage obviously is the bank basically, you transfer ownership of your home to the bank, and the bank pays you income per month. Mm-hmm. And the amount of income that they pay you is obviously relative to the amount of equity that you have in your home, right? But at the end of, whenever you pass away, at the end of the term, if you will, whenever you pass away, the bank owns your home and they take possession.
So what you typically see advertised to people would be like home security systems. There are some values in security systems that people don't think about. I talked to a guy several years ago who was doing security systems. We were at a networking event, and I told him, I said, I don't need a security system. I live in an area where everybody in my neighborhood is heavily armed. Trust me, you do not want to come into our neighborhood with bad attitude. Everybody has dogs. I got a German Shepherd. Trust me, I know about it. If a leaf blows down the street, I know about it at 3 a.m. And he said, yeah, but you know what? Can your dog warn you when you have a plumbing leak? I said, well, what? And he said, okay, so modern security systems actually have all kinds of features that can detect water leaks, electrical problems, fires, things like that. That's a little bit different. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot of features here that are available that people don't think about. So sometimes these are a good idea. The problem is you're sold, you really need this, and it's only this amount of money. Not if you want the features that are really good. It's going to be an extra expense. So just kind of be somewhat sophisticated as you go through learning about these to make sure that you're actually getting what you want and you're not overspending and getting something you don't really need.
Welcome back to another edition of the Retirement Planning Happy Hour. Eric, Douglas, Chris Vaughn. Thank you once again for joining us to our show here, where we talk all things retirement related over a nice pour of bourbon. Today we have an interesting topic. I think
to say the least, right?
So this one was inspired by, I guess, watching cable TV, right?
Yep.
Or cable news.
Cable news in particular, right?
Listening to podcasts, listening to talk radio, and you hear all of these different products that are promoted, that are advertised on all of these different establishments and different stations. And we wanted to basically list all of these things out today and go through them one by one, how legit they are, what fears that they are addressing, and whether or not these are anything that should ever be considered in any way, shape, or form. Because everything that's on the list today, you can turn on any TV station, right, left, center, does not matter. You're going to see advertisements for these. Any talk radio station, sports talk radio. I mean, even you're going to hear advertisements for all of these different things that are all targeting seniors, and they're all targeting seniors based on some level or some specific type of fear that they might have.
There it is.
And so there's going to be a common thread that we're discussing as we go through each one of these issues today. So that's going to be today's episode. You brought a really good bottle in today.
I brought something I thought would be interesting today. So I was just going back, as we discuss, I am very hypercritical of myself. So I go back and I listen to our podcasts and I go, wow, you sound this or you sound that. So I'm listening to one of them, and we had brought in Little Book. And we had talked about how Little Book was an extension of the original small batch collection that Jim Beam did. So this is another one I thought it'd be fun to do. Knob Creek, one of the original small batch bourbons from Jim Beam, has a lot of variations on it, some of which are so common you could get them at a gas station liquor store, some of which are unicorn territory, a little bit of everything. But what I am noticing is this particular one used to be a bona fide unicorn.
It did, yeah.
I mean, this is the Knob Creek 18-year-old.
And I've not had it in a long time.
It is 100 proof. I've had this many times.
Yeah.
What I found interesting, I thought I'd bring it in. We've discussed in the past about what used to be difficult to get is becoming more and more common. Right?
Sure.
A year ago, you couldn't get regular Buffalo Trace, for example. That's a $30 bottle, expensive $30. I walked into a liquor store, out near where I live the other day, and there were cases of them just sitting out, right? And this is another one that's a good example. The Knob Creek 18-year was a bona fide unicorn. Retail on it was $199. You were going to spend $500 on it, and you weren't going to find it. Now, I'm seeing it at pretty much any decent-sized liquor store. Any big box has got it. They've got it out on the shelf. And it's dropped down. It's not $200 anymore. Now it's $170, $180. So it's still expensive. This is not a cheap one. But if you know anything about bourbon, the older it is, the less the yield they get out of the barrel. And that's one reason the price goes up. I will tell you before we start tasting this one that there is a younger Knob Creek that is even better than the 18. The 15-year is still unicorn territory. But the 18 no longer is, so that's why I thought that one would be fun. So that's what we're drinking today.
Why would the 15-year be still labeled unicorn?
Have you ever tasted the 15?
I don't think I've had. So I've got a bottle of 12 at home
Okay.
right now, which is not unicorn status, but still very good.
Yep. And that's another example. That one used to be hard to find. Now it's very common.
Yeah. So I've got a bottle of that. I have not had 18 in years, and I just had a taste, and we'll do the review later, right? But I don't know. Honestly, I don't know if I've ever had 15.
Because it's so hard to find.
I guess, yeah.
I have the 12, the 15, and the 18. I have all of them. I have put them side by side and tasted them. The 15 is markedly better.
Yeah.
Not a little bit. It is a lot better, and that's why it's so hard to find.
So,
all right, you ready to get started on fear?
We'll go through fear-based products here, and we're going to start. So you made this list, so I think you're going to spearhead a lot of this episode today. But the first one on the list is title protection, title fraud insurance, and my goodness, this one has kind of come out of nowhere over the last 1-2 years. I've been hearing advertisements for it all the time on all types of different podcasts and talk radio shows. Yep. And you did a little bit of digging.
I did some digging,
after you had a question.
I geeked out.
And it's one of those things where we kind of know intrinsically that this isn't really something that should probably be a valid concern. But you did some digging with an actual certified attorney who actually knows what they're talking about, right? And you found some of their insights interesting. So I'll let you talk about that.
Okay, so first of all, I'm just like you. I get into political podcasts and stuff like that. News, that's where you tend to hear this one.
Yeah.
And what they're selling is basically title protection. Okay. Now, the reason they're selling this is a new crime. And the concept is that somebody will go get your title
online.
They will get it online. They'll go to the county clerk's office, whatever the case might be. They get it. They do a quitclaim deed, which is actually really easy to do. I've done it many times for any number of reasons.
We talk with our clients all the time when we're doing estate plans.
They'll do a fake notary. Now, that's the interesting part. And then they will resubmit it. Here in Kentucky, to my knowledge, every single county, it costs you $50 to submit a new quitclaim deed. And boom, your title has now transferred to the ownership of somebody else. Now, that's a legitimate process. Both of us have our own trusts. When we bought our homes, we bought it ourselves, and then we have to transfer it into the titles or into the trust name. That's a quitclaim deed. So I called a client of mine that is she owns a title company, right? Yeah. She is a closing attorney. It's what she does. And I said,
I know her.
First of all, how legit is it? And she said, Chris, this crime is off the scale. Really? Okay, this is very legitimate. I said, really, how bad? Like, should I be worried? And she said, yes, it's a constant problem. We're seeing it all the time. The fear is real, and it's actually not that difficult to do. And I said, well, her name is Jessica. I said, well, Jessica, I'm not overly worried because where I live out in Shelby County, when I walk into the county clerk's office, there's a very good likelihood that the people standing there know me from church or whatever because it's a smaller community. You don't have that in Louisville. I said, so I'm not worried. And she said, you shouldn't be worried anyway. I said, why not? And she said, because you bought the correct title insurance. Okay, walk me through it, Jessica. And she said, well, here's the problem. The products that everybody is selling out there that you're hearing advertised as title protection, they actually do notify you when somebody tries to file a fraudulent quitclaim deed. Problem. That's all they do is notify you. There's no level of protection here. It's no different than an alarm going off, but the alarm doesn't stop the bad guy from getting in the house. It just makes a loud noise.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same concept. So I said, well, is there anything that you can do? And she said, yeah, you absolutely can. And she told me, in your case, you did it. I refinanced my house some time back. She said the title insurance that you buy when you do a refinance or when you purchase a house, the whole point there is that it goes back and it does a title search and it makes sure that the title that you're buying is clean, that there's no liens against it or somebody who can come back after you for something that's not your fault, right? I said, yeah, of course, that's standard. And you buy that from the title company where you do your closing. It's just kind of built in. Anybody who says, well, that's a waste of money, we're talking about a couple $100. It's a one-time expense. And if there's a problem with your title that's discovered 5, 10, 20 years down the road, can really save you. I said, okay, but that just covers the research. And she said, but you bought an enhanced policy. Now, that's a key phrase here, is enhanced. I said, okay, Jessica, walk me through that. And she said, the enhanced policy is the actual insurance against this kind of fraud, right? I said, okay, fantastic. So I've already got that. She said, yeah, you don't need to worry at all. You are protected. You are insured. And it was a one-time expense. It's unlike, your auto insurance premiums, you have to pay them every month or every year ongoing. No, this is a one-time thing. So you'd be crazy not to get the enhanced title insurance. I said, okay, so is that something that I can get online? Is that something that I can respond to one of these ads? And she said, absolutely not. What they are selling is simply an alarm. What you should get is that enhanced title insurance, and the only place that you can get that is through a title company. You're talking a couple $300, one-time expense, and you're done for the life of your home, right? So that's the deep digging that I did. I didn't know about any of this. I'm so glad that she enlightened me and that I was already protected.
Well, and she made a comment, too, that's becoming more standard, especially with more reputable title companies.
Correct.
More and more title companies are doing this as a kind of a standard protocol, this enhanced coverage. The enhanced coverage on the title protection is becoming more standard on whenever you go to do a refinance or buy a new home. Obviously, you do the closing at a title company because you have to do title insurance and all that other stuff, right? Most reputable title companies are going to start including this type of. They've been doing it. It sounds like.
Yes, she said this is actually this type of insurance has been standard at her firm for 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
So this is not a new thing anymore. And to your point, if you are working with a reputable title company, odds are they're putting this in and maybe not even telling you about it. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
And clearly that's what happened with you.
Yeah,
they probably mentioned it at the closing table when you went to do your refinance.
And I probably went, okay, over my head.
Sure, whatever. I'm here to sign 400 pages of documents, right?
At least, right. And, it comes back to something else that we talk about all the time. I trusted her, because I know her, to do what was in my best interest. And you know what? She did. So my trust was earned.
So that was a good one, and that's I think was very interesting for me to hear that, because I did not know that, and I've been hearing these commercials so much over the last year.
I have been thinking about buying it.
I've not been thinking about buying it by any means, but I definitely have heard of it, and I've kind of always figured there was some level of is this really something that's necessary for me? And now that that's been cleared up.
So moral of the story, you should have the correct kind of protection, because this is a legitimate crime and it is spreading. But what you can buy that you hear advertised on TV and podcasts and radio and that kind of things is probably not going to do what you think it does. What you really want, and it's very inexpensive, you need to go through a title company to get it.
Yeah, and especially if you've refinanced or bought a home in the last 5-6 years, you're probably already have this level of coverage.
Which would be another reason not to go out and buy something else that doesn't help you.
Exactly. So, number 2. This will be a fun one. We could probably do a whole episode on this one.
Easily.
We won't.
Oh, yeah.
Just because
this is the one that I think we hear, at least I hear it the most.
I get this question a lot, especially over the last year when the price of gold has gone up substantially. But gold and silver specifically, and let me add to that, specifically physical
Yeah, physical gold, right.
and silver. Because that's a little bit different than maybe investing in like a gold ETF or some type of a commodities fund where you get exposure to different types of, gold, silver, and other commodities that are available. But you can sell and trade and buy it kind of at your whim, whereas buying physical gold is a whole other different thing.
Yeah, it really is. So first of all, we've talked about this with people in workshops and our existing clients for years, and we've done it ad nauseum, absolutely. The difference between owning physical gold versus owning a commodities fund or ETF, and there's specific gold funds that are out there. When you own physical gold, you can own it one of two ways. You can either personally hold that, or you can have somebody else hold it, right? I think most people that I've talked to don't like the idea of somebody else holding it. So the concept here is you're dealing with a commodities broker. They sell you X amount of gold, and they put it in a gold IRA. I hate that phrase.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Right? It's kind of like, okay, so this is an ETF IRA, and this is a mutual fund IRA. It's just an IRA.
They're all the same. It's the cookie jar. The cookies inside might be a little
Correct.
bit different, but it's the same cookie jar.
It's salesmanship. This is a unique IRA. No, it's not. Okay, so that's the first part. So if they're holding the gold, you don't have to pay for shipping. You don't have to pay for the insurance of a very, very valuable, heavy thing that's being shipped, right? But you know what you do have to pay for? You got to pay for the storage.
Yep.
Right? And that's an ongoing, like renting a storage locker, if you will. And the big one that when I've talked to people, they say, I'm not really interested in doing that is, how do I know that I actually own that gold? Because I haven't seen it. You're buying on faith. You're buying on
you get a certificate.
Contractual obligations. Yeah. So that one, we'll throw that one out because most people don't like that. The concept of holding physical gold and you holding it. Okay, I just mentioned the two big ones. Number one, you have to pay to ship it to you. This is not lightweight, right? Even, if you only bought a few ounces of it, that's still got some weight to it. If you're buying something that is worth thousands of dollars and shipping it FedEx, you're going to want to insure that, right? Well, that insurance is not cheap. Once you get it to you, now where are you going to put it? And I've heard people say, well, I've got a gun safe. I got a gun safe too, right? And in theory, you're not going to be able to get my gun safe out of my house. I can assure you, if somebody had the time and the resources and they knew where it was and when I wasn't going to be there, they could get the whole safe out. We've all seen enough movies. If you have time and nobody's going to catch you because you've taken the safe somewhere else, you'll get into that safe eventually, right? So it is not a fail-safe way of nobody can get to my gold just because you have a gun safe. Okay, let's just get that one out in the open. So that's the biggest issues with owning the physical gold. But the argument that I've heard is, but do you know how much gold goes up in value over time?
Well, I think you might be ready to tell us, Chris. That would be fantastic.
Because I geeked out on this. So, first of all, as of this morning, gold almost hit $4,400 an ounce. It's all-time high today as we're recording this. All right.
It's also worth noting what else has just hit a recent all-time high.
Yeah, I'm going to get to that one. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
All right, so first of all, I looked at gold, and I went back and I followed a historical chart. Okay, so gold was pegged to the dollar. The dollar was pegged to gold, however you want to say it, up until 1971, right? And therefore, it was kept at $35 an ounce for decades. That goes all the way back to the 30s, right, before it dropped down below the 35. So gold was $35 for a long, long period of time. Then you take the dollar off the gold standard is what we call that. That was under Nixon. And at that point in time, gold can be traded, right? It can sell for what it's really worth. So it spiked, right? It went up 1,700%, if memory serves, in the 70s, right? So let's keep in mind what else is happening in the 70s, right? You had two major oil crises.
Yep,
you had political problems left and right. You had massive inflation. Inflation was 7 to 9% every year during the 70s. It was rough, right? So the 70s are a little bit of an outlier, but I did the math anyway. Okay, and this is where people will sell the concept that gold is a really, really good long-term investment because of its increase in value. February 1970, gold was $35 an ounce. As of this morning, it was $4,386 when I wrote this down. That is an increase over that, 55-year window of time of 12,531%. Okay.
Not bad.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Okay, so then I went and took the S&P 500, and I compared it to the same month. You can't get the date perfect, but pretty close. So the S&P 500 in February 1971, at the beginning, was $85.02, right? Which is stunning. As of this morning, it was $6,753.
Yeah.
An increase of 7,943%. So 2/3 of what gold did, right? So there's the selling point for why gold is such a great long-term investment. Okay.
Well, you just gave me those stats,
ahead.
and the first phrase that came to my mind, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. Right?
Okay, fair enough.
Because you hear a stat like that, and you're like, oh, well, of course, I need to run into this asset
buy gold
class
right now, yeah.
But you're going to follow it up with some more stats.
Okay, so the S&P 500 was depressed for most of the 70s because of the things that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
Keep in mind something else. In the 70s, most people were on defined benefit plans, not defined contribution plans. So let me translate that. Most people had pensions, not 401ks. That didn't really exist. But as that existed, plus you also got into where the individual investor could start buying individual stocks and bonds. Then the mutual funds came along, eventually leading into ETFs. So if you take the 1970s in, you are artificially talking about what the S&P 500 really can do. So I took the 70s out. I went up to June 1980. Now, June 1980, think about what was going on. The hostage situation in Iran. The Soviet Union was going to win the Cold War. It was rough. It was really, really bad. I'm old enough to, unfortunately, to remember a lot of that.
Presidential election year.
It was presidential election year. You had, Carter was the incumbent, and this Reagan cat was coming in, and it was crazy times, right? So gold in June of 1980 was selling for $662. Remember, it went from $35 to $662 because now it could be traded, and you found out its real value. Okay, so it had that big jump in those 10 years. 662 going up to 4,386 this morning. That is a 662% increase. Okay, interesting numbers how those worked out. 662% over that 45-year window of time. The S&P 500 was $111.24, going up to what it was as of this morning. That is a 6,071% increase. So if you take out the outlier, you said statistics is worse than damn lies, right?
Yeah.
If you tweak the statistics and you take out the outlier, because the 70s really were an outlier in many, many ways, then the S&P 500 dramatically outperforms gold if you give it enough time. Does it have bad years? Yes, it does. So does gold.
Yep.
Right? I mean, they both go up and down. Are we saying that gold is a bad investment? Absolutely not. That is not what we're saying, so please don't take that. But leaning into one particular class like that because it's a safe haven, right? Leaning into it because you think you're gonna make money. Leaning into it because I would like physical gold in my gun safe in case the world collapses. We're going to talk about prepping later on, right? Keeping it there because this is a barter tool, right? If the entire civilization melts down and we go back to something akin to the Middle Ages, I can buy and sell things with gold. I can buy and sell things with ammunition too. And I can also defend my gold, and I can hunt. And I can provide food. So I just think that that's a really flawed argument.
I also enjoy the people that want to own the physical gold because of the scenario that you're describing, and we'll get to the prepper stuff too. But because of the scenario you're describing, we're basically talking about a collapse of civilization where you actually need physical gold. And I always ask, what do you plan to do with the physical gold? If what you think is going to happen actually happens, what is your plan with the physical gold? It's super heavy.
Yeah.
Do you have like a smelting plant where you can melt it, right? Are you going to melt it yourself? Right. Are you going to mold it into coins? How are you going to determine the value of that gold? The value of gold is only worth what someone is willing to pay you for, right?
That's right.
So are you sure that everyone else is going to prescribe the same value to that that gold as you are. And I've always replied with the same answer. Like, if you want to own physical gold, that's great. But in reality, what's going to be far more valuable in the situation that you're describing is to own a lot of ammunition.
Ammunition.
That's going to be, I'd rather own all the ammunition than all the gold. Because if I've got all the ammunition, I can go take your gold, right?
Yes, exactly right.
That's if I think it's even worth anything. But
and you and I are not trying to be flippant when we say that. I'm very serious. In a true societal collapse, an anarchy situation, Antifa's coming for me and my stuff.
Yeah.
I cannot throw gold coins at them hard enough to actually do any damage or get a slingshot out. But you know what? A rifle has an incredible impact in that situation. So, and I no doubt people are going to be listening to this and going, "That's stupid. You shouldn't do that." Well, you know what?
I've already got plenty of ammunition. Well,
okay, good.
Good for you. Good
I'm all for it, right?
But that's what's always interesting to me about the people that think they need to own physical gold. Yeah. Because they think it's going to matter to some degree in this collapse of civilization that theoretically is only going to be the only real reason for you to own physical gold ever.
Now let's take that same concept though, and let's apply it to owning not physical gold. So talking about buying gold or commodities for that matter.
And viewing it as an asset class or a piece of your portfolio.
Right. So now you're talking about purchasing in an ETF or a mutual fund, and maybe it's just gold, maybe it's just silver. You were actually telling me before we started recording there's something going on with silver right now with people are selling it short. I was not aware of that at all.
There's a difference in the spot price and the I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know
a rabbit hole right there.
I just heard something about it, read an article about it. I'm not educated enough to talk about it. So what's going on with that?
You know what? Gold and commodities in general as a part of a portfolio is probably a very good idea. That's solid. Owning physical gold is where I disagree. I don't own any physical gold. You can't steal it from me. I don't own it. But I do own some gold ETFs.
It's also very illiquid. So
yes, absolutely.
if you want to go sell, if for any reasons you decide, the value of gold is decreasing, I want to get out of this investment.
You got to find a buyer.
You got to find a buyer, which means you got to find probably some type of a dealer who's going to take a little something off of the top. Then you got to lug it around and transport it and do all the things. And I've done this with a few clients. That's how I know this process, right? I've had a couple clients that have passed away with decent amounts of gold. Now they weren't gold bars; they were a lot of gold coins and other types of coins and things like that. But it's a pain. It's not easy, and especially if you're the one that was into this and you pass away, and now your kids are left cleaning up this mess, and they're probably just trying to get rid of it on a fire sale,
right?
Because they don't know what to do with all of this, with all of these coins or all this gold or whatever it may be. So there's definitely a lot of disadvantages to owning physical gold. There's far more advantages to owning it within some type of a fund.
Right.
You can debate whether or not or how appropriate it should be, or what percentage of it should be in your portfolio. Because what's interesting right now is, you're hearing a lot about the price of gold's gone up and we're hitting all-time highs.
Right.
Well, so's the S&P 500. So is the so's the NASDAQ. So's the Dow Jones. So is Bitcoin.
Yep.
What's interesting is gold. And Bitcoin to a huge degree is also kind of sold like this, kind of the store of value idea. Yep. Gold's supposed to be the store of value. When everything else goes down, when the stock market collapses, gold's going to hold its value. Well, inherently, by definition, if you think gold is supposed to be some store of value, it should not be rocketing up in value like this.
At the same time that those indices are rocketing
exactly.
up, to your point.
And so everything is becoming more and more correlated, and you can argue why, and that we're not going to do that today. But I think the idea behind gold isn't really manifesting itself in the true reality of the way that it's traded and sold today.
And let's keep in mind, this is true with gold and silvers and other commodities. This is true with the title insurance we talked about a minute ago and everything else that we're going to talk about. When you're seeing these advertisements, keep in mind that you are being sold something by people who are really, really good at making you want to buy it, right? They didn't just suddenly start saying, I think I'll go out and start selling some of this. No, they're really good at it, and they're really good at convincing you why you should own it. So be very, very cautious. So
that's a pretty good segue into the next few.
Yeah, I think we've beaten that horse to death. So let's move on.
Medicare Advantage.
All right. So if you are over 55, you are getting targeted with Medicare Advantage ads. And we've talked about this one before, so I don't want to go too far down this rabbit hole. Medicare Advantage, for those of you that do not know, is an optional plan. So basically, you're taking Medicare, Parts A and B, and you're effectively replacing them, and Part D as well, with a Medicare Advantage plan known as Part C. Okay, it functions basically in the same way that your medical coverage did from your employer during your working years. So there's some familiarity here. There's lots of things out there, but I would love to ask people when we're talking about medical planning during retirement years, and I'm sitting in a workshop, how many of you have seen a Medicare Advantage ad today? Everybody in the class always raises their hand. Well, why is that? Why is there so much advertising out there for this product? And that's usually when I get crickets. It's like, because the profit margins on this are really high. They're making a boatload of money on that. Now, I don't begrudge them making money. That's not my point. The point is that it's usually not worth what you pay for it. There are clearly exceptions to that. But Medicare Advantage, it doesn't give you any benefit for Joe Average out there. It doesn't give you any benefit that you can't get through regular Medicare with a Medigap policy.
Yep,
that's key.
And there's different Medigap policies that are available. So depending upon your specific situation, you can kind of pick and choose, and you can change those.
Yeah.
You know, you don't have to. You're not stuck with one.
You're stuck with them for, I believe it's for a year. There's an open enrollment period.
Yeah, but
and there are, 13 or 14 different variations on it. The one thing that I would caution people with Medigap policies, which we're big fans, is there are still, in this particular field, a lot of people selling door to door. They are cold knocking on people's doors to sell this product. Well, you know what? If you're buying something from somebody that you met 20 minutes ago, an hour ago, I'm looking up at my mother in heaven because she was really susceptible to this stuff. The vacuum cleaner salesman actually sold a vacuum to mom that she did not need. She already had one, but then got invited in for dinner, right? So you know who you are if you're susceptible. If somebody is knocking door to door and you're buying something like that immediately, what's that tell you? So you need to be working with somebody who specializes in Medigap policies so that you can actually get the correct one for yourself.
Yeah, I'm never going to put myself out as a Medicare expert. I don't want to be one for a lot of reasons. It's dreadfully boring, and there's so many changes and all that. But this has been my experience from everyone I've ever talked to that had a Medicare Advantage plan. They got rid of it because it didn't work. It didn't cover anything. It wasn't worth what they were paying. And Medicare itself pretty much covers the vast majority of whatever it is that they need covered.
Now, I will make an exception to that rule. There are certain professions where the contract says that when you retire, Medicare Advantage is actually paid for by the former employer. I don't know if this is true anymore, but I know that public school teachers in Kentucky, at one point in time, the contract said that if you retired, and you followed all the rules, 27 years and 55 years old, that you would get Medicare Advantage paid for by the state. If somebody else is paying for it, Medicare Advantage is fantastic, right? There's lots of great coverages. The argument here is not whether the coverage is good. The argument is the coverage worth the cost that you're going to have to spend on it, because it is considerably more expensive than taking regular Medicare A, B, and D, and getting a Medigap policy. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to stop and talk bourbon right now.
Sure.
Because you've done something that I don't remember you ever doing during this podcast. You finished it off very quickly and immediately poured another one. So I think we have to address that.
That might be a problem with this one because it's delightful.
So obviously you like it.
It's very delightful. Like I said, it's been a long time since I've had it, and I forgot how good it was. It's smooth. It's all, it's all Kentucky Chew, no hug. A lot of flavor for 100 proof. Is a lot of flavor. A lot of oak.
Drinking a big thing of soft caramel.
It's a lot of oak, a lot of caramel. Actually, so when I put because when I poured, when I made my second pour, I put the water in it. Mm-hmm. Honey immediately, coated So it just changed the flavor quite a bit. Changed the flavor.
I didn't put
profile.
as much water in mine as you did, but I still got that honey. I guess it just more of it.
Yeah.
You said that it's very oaky, typical of a bourbon that is this old.
18. Yeah, it's an 18. It's been sitting in an oak barrel.
It's been in an oak barrel for a long time. That's actually one of the big complaints about older bourbons is when you get past that 12-year mark, the oak tends to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And you may like that. You may not.
I do. Yeah.
I had the privilege just last night. I was at a bourbon party where there were some, let's just say, unique things. And I couldn't even tell you the brand. I was not familiar with the label, but we all had a little pour of it. I had a 21-year-old bourbon that was distilled in 1948 and bottled in 1969. So this was in a bottle before I was born, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, my goodness. I mean, this was a spiritual moment, right? But it was all oak. It was good, but it was absolutely all oak. This kind of gets a lot of the same thing.
Yep.
If I have a complaint about the 18, and this is where I personally like the 15 better, I like this better than the 12, it's almost too smooth.
Well, it gets you in trouble.
This is water smooth. Right? There's no
delicious.
bite, no burn. It's a big mouthful of caramel and maybe a little honey.
It's smooth but flavorful.
Oh,
and which
yeah.
is it's tough to it's a tough balance to get in the bourbon world when, whenever I think about that, what comes to mind immediately is Pappy. You drink Pappy and I can almost chug that stuff.
Yeah.
It's delicious. So this is, I'm not necessarily putting it in the same vein as Pappy, but it's the same type
But as far
of
as
deal
the
where
smoothness goes,
it's just really smooth, but it's not sacrificing flavor.
And this is not a wheated bourbon, which tends to be smoother.
Correct.
Right? This is a regular rye bourbon. But yeah, it's outstanding. Well done, Jim Beam. So I'm going to go ahead and take your lead, and I'm going to have another pour of that.
The only reason I poured the second because I don't have any meetings today, so it's anyway. So we're going to move into. We'll go through these next couple pretty quickly. So reverse mortgages. You hear a lot about reverse mortgages. I don't get a lot of questions about it because I think most people kind of identify this as something that's better. They're not as good as advertised. The only situations that I've seen where a reverse mortgage makes any kind of sense. Mm-hmm. Obviously, pretty much all your wealth is tied up in your home.
Yeah.
You don't want to move from your home. You don't want to sell your house to tap the equity. And you don't have any kids or you don't have any beneficiaries that you care about whether or not they get any type of an inheritance. Because when you do a reverse mortgage, the idea of a reverse mortgage obviously is the bank basically, essentially you transfer ownership of your home to the bank and the bank pays you income per month. Mm-hmm. And the amount of income that they pay you is obviously relative to the amount of equity that you have in your home, right? But at the end of, whenever you pass away, at the end of the term, if you will, whenever you pass away, the bank owns your home and they take possession.
That's exactly the concept behind a reverse mortgage. Now, I have found out recently that there are ways to do this where the bank doesn't actually possess the home upon your death, but you're not going to get anywhere close to as much of a payout. I don't personally understand how that works. To me, a reverse mortgage, it's exactly the way you were describing it. This is a last resort. We have failed to save enough, or we
put so much into our home.
Right.
Yeah.
We put everything into our home. We've lived longer than planned, and we have a longevity problem now. This is the backup plan, right? And that's the way it should be. I met with a couple many, many years ago when I first got into this business. And they said, yeah, we're interested in talking to you about being our financial planners. Great. So they invited me out to their home. Lovely, lovely homes out in Spencer County. Stunning the amount of things that they've done to their home beyond what their income suggested they should be living like. So just in talking to them, that was their plan. He had been to some workshop or something somewhere, and the idea was build up the value of your home and then intentionally do a reverse mortgage at retirement. I couldn't convince him. And I will tell you, living in Shelby County, he lived in Spencer County, we don't have a lot of Home Depots and we only have one Lowe's. So I have bumped into the same individual several times over the years at the Lowe's out in Shelby County, and he's out there buying more stuff for his house. right? And it's like, okay, if you know anything about real estate, he is pricing his house above the other houses in his neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right. And this, make no mistake, this is a nice neighborhood, but he's pricing his house above them. So think about this. If you take a house that would normally sell for $1 million, right? If you dump that into a neighborhood where the high-end houses sell for $200,000, do you think you can still get $1 million for that house?
Absolutely
Of course
not.
not. The local neighborhood pulls the value down. The opposite works as well. If you take a $200,000 house and you dump it into a neighborhood where they sell for $1 million, you're going to get $400,000 out of it. Same concept applies. He's pricing himself out of the market. So at this point in time, all of the additional things he's doing to his house to add value,
it's negligible.
It's not doing anything. And you say, well, but I'm not trying to sell it to somebody. I'm trying to get the bank to do a reverse mortgage. If you think they're not going to do an appraisal, and if you don't think that appraisals are based upon what other houses in your area have sold for recently, you're very, very naive. That's just not how real estate works.
Yeah. Number one rule of real estate is you never want to own the cheapest or the most expensive home in your neighborhood. That's right. That's kind of real estate 101.
Long story short, reverse mortgages should always be a last resort.
Well, it's also worth noting, too, the calculate, because a lot of people think the calculation is, okay, well, they're going to pay me, let's say, $3,000 a month. That's probably high, but let's say it's $3,000 a month, so I lose $3,000 in equity. It's never a 1-to-1 ratio like that.
No.
If they're paying you $3,000 a month, you're probably losing $3,500 at least in equity per month. So because there's fees built in, because they'll advertise, hey, no fees. Well, the fees are coming from your equity, right?
That's right.
So that's worth noting as well. So. Insurance services, I think specifically burial insurance.
Yeah, we talked about this, I don't know, a week or two ago.
Yeah, and we'll see clients, and we've seen kind of a run of clients here recently. We've mentioned it before, but
it's amazing how they always come in runs like that.
But it's interesting because you'll see clients that have a sizable net worth.
Yeah.
And they'll come in with a burial policy, as they call it. That's typically how they're sold. And it's worth $15,000, $20,000, and they're still paying premiums on it. It's like, why are you carrying a $15,000 burial policy when you've got over $500,000 in investments?
Well, I don't want my kids to have to pay for my funeral.
Well, just go prepay it.
Right. Let's go back to what you just said a minute ago.
Yeah.
You got $500,000 in your brokerage account. I think we can kind of partition that a little bit.
Yeah, I know it threw my wife off guard when we walked into her parents' house one day and we saw brochures for a cemetery, and so my wife was like, "Is there something you're not telling me? What's going on?" Come to find out, they paid their plots, so everything's been paid for. We're not going to have to cover that. Knock on wood, hopefully for a very long time, of course, right? But they went ahead and took care of it. You prepay today, and you're probably saving a lot of money instead of having to pay for rates at 15, 20 years or however long it may take.
Yep. So, now, I want to add something to this one that I think is unique compared to the other subjects we're talking about today. We talked about these are things that are typically sold on fear. Yes. But I think this one has another component to it, especially for baby boomers or for anybody who is older than baby boomers that are still around. There is a cultural aspect to this. You were taught that you're supposed to go out and buy your gravestone in advance, or buy the plot and prepay all these things. And I think a lot of people, what they're doing is they're hearing, I was supposed to have done this when we were in our 30s. Now we're in our 70s and we can't go out and buy life insurance anymore. We're too old and it would cost too much. But I can get this one. So since I failed to do what I was supposed to do, that's the key phrase here, I can get this policy and take care of it. And so I think there's a cultural aspect. You weren't supposed to do anything, right? That's the part that I would say, get that part out of your head. What you're supposed to do is plan properly starting today. If you didn't do it correctly yesterday's gone. Yep. Right? Let's go ahead and get it right now. And to your point, if you've got the assets available, just simply set some of those assets aside and invest them in a way that we don't have to worry about it, or go prepay or something along those lines.
And if you do go out and get some type of a burial policy, the premiums on those are usually not very cheap.
No.
And so all you're doing is cutting into the value of your estate to pay for this life insurance or burial policy. you're still paying for it one way or the other, right?
Well,
so
the whole point here is that burial policies, or final expense policies, they're sometimes called, is they don't require any kind of medical underwriting or anything. And you're thinking, oh, I'm 75 years old. I'm 80 years old. I couldn't pass the physical at this point in time. They don't require a physical. Right, because they require extremely large premium payments.
Yep.
They're offsetting their risk against the guy who's going to pass away the day after he signs the contract by having 10,000 other people paying way too much money for it.
And this goes back to what you mentioned earlier, door-to-door salesmen,
Yeah.
which it amazes me that we still have those in
They're
today's
still out there.
day and age. But I've heard enough stories where you still hear about these door-to-door sales guys selling final expense burial policies. So something to be aware of. If you're getting anything, if you're buying anything from someone who's knocking on your door, just don't.
Yeah.
Just don't. But there's a lot of people that are susceptible. And, of course, the common thread with all of these types of things that we're talking about, they're sold exclusively to seniors.
Mm-hmm.
And they are preying on a more vulnerable part of the population that may not understand the differences or the nuances with all of these different types of products. So that's something that's very important to keep in mind as well.
And if I may, one more thing before we move on, I want to talk to those people out there who say, because my dad does this all the time, drives us crazy, they're not going to sell anything to me I don't want. Yeah, they do. They do it to you all the time.
Oh, you're the best
right?
target.
You're the target. Oh my gosh, you're easy, right? Because you think that you're better. You think that you can outsmart them. These sales techniques are so honed. You know what I mean? They've got. Do not think that they can't get to me, because they can. Right? Just please don't.
There's a reason they can afford those spots on cable
that's
TV.
Exactly right.
So,
all right, let's move on from that one.
What do you got next?
Legal services.
Sure.
Okay. Now, this one doesn't necessarily pertain to the senior crowd, although they certainly market to this crowd as well. So, two different things. I'm going to hit on this one very briefly. Personal injury. Now, I know a couple of PI attorneys who are as honest as the day is long. They are outliers in their field, right? There's a reason why we call these people ambulance chasers. First of all, my wife was a claims adjuster for a major insurance company. She's moved on and she's doing something similar but different now. She was with a major company. She was a claims adjuster for 24 years. And she worked specifically in a unit for the second half of that career where they dealt only with people who had hired an attorney. Very, very rarely did they get any more than what the insurance company was going to pay out in the first place. They might have got it expedited a little bit, maybe. But now you're going to give up 30% of what you would have gotten. Mm-hmm. You're not necessarily going to get that, $600 million payout. That kind of stuff is extremely rare, right? But you see the ads all the time. So it kind of comes back to the same, here's another theme we're hearing. If you're seeing ads for it constantly, it's because the profit margins for the people who are doing the advertisings are really, really high. So just be very cautious. That's almost a get-rich-quick scheme. I drive down 64 here from time to time going to Indiana, and you drive through the northeast part of Louisville. It's a more depressed part of town.
Northwest.
I'm amazed. Did I say northeast?
You said northeast.
I'm sorry, not the northeast. That's the nice part of town. The northwest part of town, the Portland area, it's a depressed part of town, and I'm amazed the number of signages that I see for personal attorneys or personal injury attorneys. So anyway, prepaid legal. So this is one that you do see advertisements for. A lot of people get this through their employer. Nothing wrong with that. If your employer is picking up the tab, that's great. But there are a lot of firms out there who are saying you can pay, and it's usually paid annually, you can pay for prepaid legal, right? Now, that sounds great. I might need an attorney. I might need to get my will or my trust redone or done in the first place, whatever the case might be. So I'm going to get a prepaid legal policy. Mm-hmm. Kind of like I'm playing with the big boys now, kind of like these companies or these families that keep attorneys on retainer. It is not the same thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but it's not the same thing, right? So I actually did one of these several years ago because through my wife's employer, we had a prepaid legal plan. Do not try to say that 10 times fast.
Yeah.
It's going to sound like you've had 6 or 7 of these. I had one of those, and we utilized it, right? We got our very first will done after we got married, and, we did all that kind of stuff, and it was fine. But what we needed was not complex. So when they took that policy away, and I saw one of these, and I was like, oh, this is interesting, I actually did it. You know what value I got out of my prepaid plan for the, I think, 2 years I kept it?
Can I guess it was negative?
It was nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing, right? It was a total waste of money. I did look into it. I had a problem. I don't remember what it was. I had a problem with something where, okay, I need an attorney to tell this company to do whatever. I don't even remember the details. So we actually had a local attorney right here in Louisville that was assigned to us. I called him up and he said, we don't do that. What? Right? That's the reason I bought this. I was told specifically that this would be covered. Yeah, but we don't do that. Okay, just keep in mind you're going to get what you pay for. They don't make a lot of money off these. They sell them to do it in bulk, right?
Yeah.
And you know what? Okay, we'll do estate planning for you. Yeah, you're going to get a simple will. Is that what you really need?
Well, the reality, too, is the number of people that truly need a lawyer for anything is really, really small.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, estate planning aside, and to your point, the estate planning services that you're getting through something like this are going to be very, very minimal.
Rudimentary, right.
Right. So the vast majority of people will never need a lawyer for pretty much anything in their life other than maybe doing a will.
Right.
So
let's just keep that in mind. Attorneys are expensive.
Yeah.
An attorney friend of mine was explaining this to the other day that the going rate now for attorneys in Louisville, Kentucky, this is a very low cost of living area. The going rate per hour is now $650. I almost got sick. Man. It's like, really? I mean, really? She said, yes, that's the going rate. And I remember, of course, I'm showing my age. I remember when a really expensive Washington, D.C. or New York attorney was $350.
Yeah.
And now you're pretty much double that here in little old Louisville, Kentucky, right? Mm-hmm. So even at those prices, you're probably still better off to pay hourly for the 1 hour of legal work that you'll need every decade than to pay for a prepaid legal service.
And really what you're paying for is you're paying for 20 minutes of conversation, and then you're paying, the lawyer to hand that off to
their paralegal.
Yeah, exactly. To actually do the paperwork.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Anyway. So just kind of keep those in mind. You're not necessarily going to get what you pay for in this case. All right.
So you got prepper gear.
Last one.
Security and prepper gear.
I love this one.
This is probably a good one to wrap up on. And this goes along the same lines as their gold and silver conversation and things that, and the reasons. Well, first of all, the reasons that anybody loads up on prepper gear is because they are being sold something based on fear.
Oh,
they are afraid that something is going to happen,
correct.
And essentially what they're afraid is going to happen is essentially the collapse of civilization.
Yeah.
Based upon who you talk to. I know there have been some shows on TV. They're kind of amusing to watch. I've watched a few episodes of them.
Oh my gosh, I get addicted to them so fast.
Yeah, these people that are just loading up on just everything.
Like, wow, I didn't even know they made that.
All that aside, it's got to be a miserable way to live. Just scared of everything that could possibly happen to you in life.
But, actually, I wasn't thinking about it, but you're spot on. I know a couple of people who kinda get into prepping. And legitimately because they think that the world might come to an end. And it's like, gosh, what a horrible way to live. All right. Yeah. It just, that sounds horrible.
Every now and then you'll hear a story about some billionaire that's like building some bunker that's, 10 stories deep into the ground. And it's like, why do you want to live underground for years if there was some type of a nuclear fallout? Like, what are you going to do in the bunker?
That's a great point. I remember, of course, I was high school age during the Cold War, right?
Yeah.
And I remember when, certain movies came out, like The Day After was famous. I remember watching that on TV when that came out. And I remember my parents saying, I would not head for a bomb shelter. If there was a global thermonuclear war, by the way, if you've never seen War Games, go back and watch that movie.
Man.
It's so awesome.
Oh, that's a good one, yeah.
All of a sudden, I feel like I want to go back and watch that now. But if you've ever thought about the world coming to an end and having to hide underground and all, I remember my dad saying, I would paint a bullseye on the top of my house if I thought it was coming. And that's like, I can't argue with that. I don't want to live like that. That sounds horrible.
Take me to Jesus.
Yeah, exactly. You know what?
I'll be perfectly happy.
Much happier then. So, you know what? There are some legitimate times for prepper gear. The one that I see the most on conservative podcasts, and I see it a lot. I don't know about the non-conservative, non-political ones, but it's buying food that is hermetically sealed or whatever, and this stuff is still going to be edible and tasty 50 years from now.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to call BS on that's going to be tasty. It might be edible, it might be safe, but having been in the military, there is the infamous food known as the MRE, or the meals ready to eat. That's basically what you're buying. I have eaten thousands of them, haven't enjoyed one of them, right? Yeah. They're edible. They keep you alive. They sustain life, but they're not necessarily good. Right? And they've tried to improve them, and I'm sorry, it's still just not that good.
It's salad, huh?
Yeah. But you know what? There is a time and a place, and we were talking about this before we started recording. Okay, what happens if you live in, say, the Atlantic coast of Florida? And hurricanes are a very real thing. We're kind of on the back end of peak season for hurricanes right now. So if a Cat 5 hurricane hits right where you live and you didn't evacuate because you were an idiot or because it came in faster than what we thought.
Or you heard about a really cool hurricane party going on.
Yeah.
Those are big.
Okay.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, I've been to tornado parties before. And okay, so I'm one of those idiots. I can't throw everybody under the bus. But okay, so a major hurricane comes through your area and for whatever reason, you're still there. You are in a survival mode. It's not like, we have tornadoes here, but if you have a tornado go through your neighborhood 2-3 blocks away, they're still functional. They can still get police and fire and EMS to you. Hurricanes are different because of the size, right? So it does make a little bit of sense to have some type of prepped gear, food, first aid, survival type things in your home for those types of things. For the people who live in earthquake-prone areas, that out on the West Coast, even the what is it, the New Madrid fault,
San Andreas,
the New Madrid. That's what I'm thinking of. That's in Missouri, Tennessee, Kentucky border area. If that thing ever really kicks, we could be in a lot of trouble in this area. So it does make sense to have some of that. But man, some people just go off the deep end.
But I think it's fair to say that's not what we're talking about.
It's
being prepared for a hurricane versus being prepared for the end of civilization is a little bit of a different thing.
Comes back to that ammunition thing that we were talking about a little bit earlier.
But you see the commercials. I hear them all the time. I see the ads. I hear the ads, and somebody's buying it because they keep putting the ads out. And it's just always interesting to me. Once again, the steps that you have to go through in your mind to get to where you were ever going to need those types of, security measures that have been put into place. We're talking about a total collapse of civilization.
Yeah.
The steps that you have to take in your mind to get to a place where you need physical gold and silver in your hands to survive. We're talking about just a mass casualty of everything, every norm.
Everything that you know of.
Everything in our civilization has to crumble. And you can say, there's third world countries that might already live like this, and maybe I wouldn't argue with you, but I mean, it's a total collapse of all of civilization. Right. And if you really think that that's going to happen, maybe I'm just not equipped for that.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm to the point, I'm on the second half of life now. I just had a birthday. Yeah. Maybe I'm just not going to be as well equipped for that, but I want to enjoy my life today.
Yeah.
And the things that you have to sacrifice, the things that you have to give up in the forms of money and investments and life experiences in order to maybe fund all of these different fears that you might have about what could potentially happen in an absolute worst case scenario, you're sacrificing a lot. And you're having to live a certain way with a certain mindset that to me just seems very unhealthy and very unfun.
Yeah. Not
fun.
You made the point a while ago. Europe is a dumpster fire right now when it comes to policies and just utter stupidity. It's still functioning society.
I was there for 2 weeks earlier
Right.
this year, and I had a very pleasant time.
Exactly. Okay, so maybe it's a hot mess, but you know what? You said the word a minute ago, a total collapse. I've been to a third world country. I'm going back in April of next year on a mission trip. It's still a functioning society. It's got lots of problems, but it's still a functioning society. You don't necessarily have to prep for the end of the world to be ready for that. So, all right, I want to hit this one last one before we finish off today, and I think it's appropriate that we hit this one at the end, and that is security. So what you typically see advertised to people would be like home security systems, right? There's a lot of people making a lot of money doing this. And here's the one that I have heard, and I've heard these words come out of my mouth. I don't need a home security system. I got a German Shepherd. Trust me, if there is a deer within 300 yards of our house, everybody knows about it because that dog is losing her ever-loving mind, right? So there's some truth to that. But one thing I do want to point out, there are some values in security systems that people don't think about. I talked to a guy several years ago who was doing security systems. We were at a networking event. And I told him, I said, I don't need a security system. I live in an area where everybody in my neighborhood is heavily armed. Trust me, you do not want to come into our neighborhood with bad attitude. Everybody has dogs. I got a German Shepherd. Trust me, I know about it. If a leaf blows down the street, I know about it at 3 a.m. And he said, yeah, but you know what? Can your dog warn you when you have a plumbing leak? I said, well, what? And he said, okay, so modern security systems actually have all kinds of features that can detect water leaks, electrical problems, fires, things like that. That's a little bit different, right? And where it really hit home, I was telling my sister about that, several years ago. And she said, you know what, that's probably a good idea, but I don't think that's the money that we want to spend right now. It wasn't 3 months later. They had a water pipe burst in their house underneath the sink. Oh. Yeah, I mean, I've had it happen too, but I was dealing with it at the time and I got the problem solved. They were out of town.
So always when
I've
it happens.
seen the video of the waterfall in their basement. Now, thank goodness their basement is unfinished, but there's a lot of things stored down there. Yeah. Those kinds of things. And these kinds of security systems, if you get the right ones and you buy the correct options, literally could have shut the water main off and minimized the damage. So this is one that I actually, as somebody who is I've dealt with a lot of security. Right, I'm on a security team at our church. I mean, I have in my phone right now access to all the cameras and everything, so I'm a little sensitive to this. And I normally think security systems are a waste. I want real human intelligence. I want a dog, that kind of stuff. But there's a lot of features here that are available that people don't think about. So sometimes these are a good idea. The problem is you're sold, you really need this, and it's only this amount of money. Not if you want the features that are really good. It's going to be an extra expense. So just kind of be somewhat sophisticated as you go through learning about these to make sure that you're actually getting what you want and you're not overspending and getting something you don't really need.
Once again, those are going to be sold based on fear. Not to say that there's no value there, but they are sold based on fear of someone coming in middle of the night and all that, fear for your safety and fear for the loss of money and fear of civilizational collapse.
Correct. Yeah.
All these different things are sold to you based on fear, and they're sold specifically to a more vulnerable part of the population. Yep. So that's what's important to note about any type of advertisement you see on TV. It's interesting because you don't see very many advertisements on TV for just detailed, comprehensive financial planning. You don't see many ads on TV for, just a diversified, well-managed investment portfolio. You don't see many of those advertisements. Right. Because, in the grand scheme of things, if you're doing it well, it's within reason and the profit margins aren't quite as high, right? So That's always interesting to me, the products that you see sold versus the products that are really good for you.
Yeah.
So
It's a great way to look at it.
So keep that in mind. So with all that being said, we're running up on an hour here, probably a pretty good time to shut it down for today. Thank you very much for joining us. If you have questions about anything that we talked about today on the podcast, please give us a call. Links in the show notes. You can call. You can schedule a time with us at our website, fwppartners.com. Thank you very much for joining us, and see you next time.